Hey family, Reverend Russ back again with another ministry pivot. Super excited about all of the pivots that have happened so far. Prayerfully, you've seen them. We are now on 24. Super excited to be with my friend and brother today, Pastor Jerrod, and we'll talk more about him in a moment. But if you it's your first time listening to Ministry Pivot, thank you for getting on. But those that have been riding for this past several, over a year now, which is great, I want you to make sure that you you subscribe to Ministry Pivot, you comment, you share, you like so that others can know about it, but really comment so that others can really know about what's going on here at Ministry Pivot as we continue to take seeds of this being our season of opportunity. Don't forget, on ministrypivot.com, you can get information from articles that I've written. Shout out to Givelify for their partnership, and articles that I've written on ministry and how ministry may look differently in this season. Also, for my previous pivots, all of those that are there, and super excited about the very last one we had with my friend and brother, Dr. Heber Brown. That was an awesome one. Make sure that you go back and you check that one out. And then coming up, we have some really cool pivots. Really looking forward to the ones that are coming up in the next couple weeks. Also, for the 5-minute pivots, also looking forward to you all engaging in those. Just really trying to create content that is helpful, but content that also moves us forward. But today, I am super excited to have my friend, Pastor Jerrod, with us. He is out in Memphis, doing great work there. Super excited that he's with us, but doing really great work there in youth ministry. And he has a book out that we've been talking about and praying about for almost a year right now. And so without even going on any further, let's go ahead to the conversation with Pastor Jerrod and I.
Pastor J, man, super excited to have you with us on Ministry Pivot. Thank you for being a part of it, brother. Super excited to have you.
Man, look, I'm hyped, bro. I really am. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on here. I mean, I feel like I've made it. I feel like I'm you just know I'm head over heels, just excited, man. Like so, but yeah, thank you so much for having me, man.
No problem, man. I'm super excited. I'm super thankful for you and for your gift. I already told the people a little bit about kind of where you are. We know we're going to talk about Riot Starter today, but just give us a little bit of background of your understanding, or really just when you came in the youth ministry. How did you know you were called to youth ministry? We've been talking for decades, so we'll talk about that some. But how did you know you were called to youth ministry?
Man, you know, I don't know that the initial calling was heard. Is like most of us, we probably say we didn't know it. But I initially was playing football, and you know, just man, I moved to Memphis. I'm originally from Florida, and so moved out here to Memphis, and I met my my wife out here. So you know, it was just like your mom. I'm like, I'm never coming home. And so, but she was in church, and I wasn't really like, you know, like in the church like that. And but I wanted to I wanted to date her. And so I did what any, normal blooded, African American young man would do. I joined the choir because I wanted to make sure she knew I was serious about dating her. And so, man, just got into the church and just started being faithful and singing in the choir. And they initially asked me, my background is in therapy. I'm a licensed therapist. And so they asked me would I serve in the youth ministry. And at the time I was like, nah, like I'm good. Like I'm meeting with kids all the time. I don't really want to do that at church. And so a couple years passed by, and they was just like, man, we really think you can help us in the youth ministry. And at the time, they had a youth pastor, and so I'm just serving. They wanted me to serve alongside, him, and so eventually I said, yeah, I'll do that. And so we just began to be faithful and serve alongside him. 2 weeks later, they let this guy go.
Wow.
2 weeks later. And I'm just like, wow. So they called me into the office like Monday night at 8 o'clock. Now you get called into the church office on a Monday night at 8 o'clock. It cannot be good, right? It just can't be good. So I'm assuming that they finna clean house. Everybody that was on his team, they gotta go, right? But our associate pastor, Pastor Karen, says, Pastor wants you to be the youth guy. And I'm like, are you sure? Because I'm just a football player. I know nothing about, doing this. And so she said, well, could you do it until we find somebody? And I was like, well, look, I'm going back to Florida. It's 4th of July weekend, and I'm going back to Florida. I go home, and we had a great time that weekend. But that next morning, I'm sitting on the front steps of my sister's house, and man, just as loud as I'm talking to you, I hear the Spirit say, "Why do you want this?" Because I'm naturally competitive. Like I play football. So I'm naturally competitive, and the Spirit says, "Why do you want this?" And before I could respond, it says, "Because if you want this to be better than the guy before you, don't take it." And in that moment, I responded, "No, I want young people to know that they're free now and not when they're 35." And I came back to Memphis, and I've been rocking ever since.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Shout out to Pastor for me, man. Shout out
Yeah,
to
Pastor Spencer.
yeah. Shout out Pastor Spencer. Shout out Pastor Watley, Kingdom over here. But I know we met decades ago, and I remember your passion. I remember your excitement, but I also remember your effectiveness in the call. And I remember looking at it as a guy who was at that point. I didn't realize I was transitioning away from youth ministry, being the person. But I remembered it, and I was like, man, that's dope. Like Jay got the passion that I hadn't seen in a lot of youth people, and that I hadn't seen in somebody outside of seeing myself doing it. And so it was super dope seeing you there, and seeing the great work that you were doing there, and you are doing there still there in the Memphis area. And I want to ask you this question. How have you seen youth ministry shift over the last couple decades? How have you seen it shift?
Yeah, and I gotta say, man, like I think when I met you, man, I was still figuring out like youth ministry. I just, like you said, I just was like, yo, like I'm just gonna go hard and we'll see what happens after that. But I think when I met you, you began to kind of give structure, to what we were doing. You began to give us thought, like a language, like what we should be thinking about. I'll never forget. You did an analogy. You had our leaders grab some chairs, and you had them grab a bunch of chairs at one time. And I remember it was Trey. It actually was Trey. I don't know if you remember that. It was Trey that you told.
I didn't know that was Trey.
It was Trey that And so you told Trey to pick up all these chairs. He picks up all these chairs. And you say, hey, go walk to the door over there. And, Trey, he picks the chairs up and he goes and walks to the door. And then you say, hey, well, come back. And he comes back. And you say, well, now give everybody on the front row a chair. And now y'all go walk to the door. And you go walk to the door. You say, was that easier or harder? They said, of course it was easier. He says, Jerrod, when you do less, your ministry will go further. And it was just like, because every youth pastor is like trying to, they're the video guy, they're the editor, they're singing, they're preaching.
All of the chairs,
all of it.
All of the hats.
It really transformed like, how can we go further if I do less? But now you have these people who you poured the vision into, and now and I'm talking about when we did that, it just took off. It was just like, get them the keys and get out the way. And so, but I think what I've seen since then in youth ministry, I've seen the deprioritization of youth ministry in many churches in our culture. And maybe not just in the ministry itself, but in the investment of leaders.
That's good.
You see a lack of, and that's a concern, because I mean, who are the gatekeepers for young people? Who are the gatekeepers for this generation and for this culture, for youth culture? And I've seen that more and more ever. And some of it is economical and some of it is contextual, but I really have seen, but if you go into any church or you go into any, to any senior pastor and you say, hey, what's important in your church? And they'll tell you, hey, I believe the young people are very important. I believe, man, we want to make sure we create a church. But really, many of them don't invest.
We taught them that.
Right. Many of them don't invest in that area. So I've seen the scope of youth ministry has changed in that area. that I've seen. Like, just man, there's just been like this deprioritization of investing in young leaders in that area.
Yeah, and I think that's when I was talking to one of my colleagues in ministry, friends. We were talking about youth ministry. That's one of the things that we don't see. A couple decades ago, the level of hype in youth ministry, right? The
Oh yeah,
level of excitement in youth ministry
yeah,
across the board. I mean, it's there
yeah,
in some of our churches,
yeah,
but when it comes to be honest, some of our African American colored churches,
yeah,
it's black and brown churches.
yeah,
That's
man,
not it's not there the way it used to be
yeah, man,
a couple decades ago. And I think it's to your point, it's a point of concern because while we can say we want youth ministry to be an important piece, we have to also follow it up. Now, I will say, because I sit in a different seat now, it's hard to find a you, to find a me out
right,
there really looking
right,
to do youth ministry this way. I think the culture has said that you can do other stuff, right?
yeah, yeah,
We're coming to a different place in this COVID season, and
yeah,
I think it's not the appealing thing as it used to be a
yeah,
couple decades ago. And so even in
yeah,
seminaries, there aren't as many people
yeah.
who I'm seeing who are excited to say, yeah, when I get out of here, I want to go rock at a church to do youth ministry full time. Like
That's so
that's like,
good.
oh yeah, that's not a thing. And I think those who are listening and watching now, like I think that's something that we need to be in prayer about. That God will blow a new wind, that God will blow a new
Yeah,
level of introduce riot
yeah,
into a righteous riot
yeah.
into the society, because our kids need it, right? Like, my daughter just turned 7. She's
Wow,
saved already. She got
wow, man.
baptized on her
I saw
birthday
that. That's so
last
crazy.
month, and that's super dope. But she's at home with 2 preachers, right? So and she loves worship, you know what I mean? But I know there are several students who are like her and even more excited about God than she is. But the question is, who are they going to be raised up under? Now,
Yes,
obviously, parents are the first line,
of course.
but you need to be in partnership with a youth ministry. And so
Yeah.
you need to be able
And
to
Rev,
have an
I think
understanding.
even
Go
to
ahead.
that
Go
point,
ahead.
I think even to that point, man, about how important that is. I think what I've seen also is this, and we've seen this, because youth ministry was, there was this, there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you saw many people trying to create like these cookie cutter ministries, like, okay, if I saw it work over here, then it's gonna work over here, and so you had
yeah.
the hype, like you said. So if it looks hype over here, then I gotta have that same hype in my youth ministry. And what we was starting to see is we were seeing youth ministry that didn't have mission. And so they had a
Right.
lot, they had a lot of different things going on. They had the pizza, they had the dodgeball, they had the games. I mean, they had all of those things, and it was hype. I mean, for the gram, it would look good, but those
Yeah,
but there
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
mission. And
yeah.
so I was even talking to even some youth pastors, like, but I'm seeing that my students are choosing basketball over youth group, or they're choosing dance class over youth group. And what we begin to see is that it was a lack of mission, because in all of those areas that we talk about, basketball, kids have a mission,
It's
right?
great.
They got a
Yep,
mission. Like I don't care how bad your basketball team was the year before,
yep,
your coach is
yep,
telling you, hey, we going to state. Football,
yep,
we got a mission. You can be 2-9 the year before. They're going to say, hey,
yep.
we going to state. There's a mission. Cheerleading, like they got a mission. Like they want to get on
Yep,
the ESPN at Disney World
yep,
and show spirit
yep,
fingers. And
yep.
and so those things give them mission. But when we come to the church, we say, man, come play dodgeball and eat pizza.
Wow.
Now that's cool for a
Yeah,
little while, but after a
yeah,
while, like that's not a mission. But the crazy part is we have the greatest mission that this world is ever gonna hear. And it says,
yep.
therefore, now go and make disciples of all people. Now, when you give them that mission, now youth group changes from just this place I come socialize to a place where I come be mobilized, to a place
That's
where
great.
I come equipped with a mission. And I think if youth ministries can get back to equipping and giving mission to, we'll see that needle turn back to, not just hype youth ministry, but youth ministries that are driven by mission.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And so I was going to ask, my next question was going to be talking about the impact of COVID on youth ministry, but I think we'll get there. But I think with what we're talking about, honestly, with this new, or not new, but a imagining, re-examining of
Yeah,
youth ministry, I
yeah,
think enter in, my boy, the Riot
yeah,
Starter, right? Enter in the righteous riot, right? That I think this
yeah.
joint when we and just full disclosure, right? I've been walking with Pastor Jay for a couple years now on this book, and it wasn't a book. It was what he was doing, and I was like, yo, what you're doing with Riot Starter out there in Memphis is ridiculous. It is really, but I know it's more than just a theme. And more, and not just because the theme is dope, the clothing line is dope, but I knew it was this. I knew it was
Man.
this with the resources, and was trying to get you to write it because I couldn't write it. But so let's introduce what is a riot starter. What is a righteous riot?
Man, listen, full disclosure, I didn't want to write a book. Rev, bullied me into writing a book. But like he said, like it was really in my heart. I think the idea and the concept of Riot Starter came around the time the Mike Brown riots in St.
Mhm.
Louis were happening, and just those images were so debilitating. If you're definitely a youth pastor, if you're
Mhm.
you were seeing like, man, Lord, like what can we do? Like what is, you were seeing people throwing bottles, and I mean church leaders. I mean, they were out, just they were mad, and they had every reason to be. And the riot was a response. Whether people like it or not, the riot was a response to what was happening.
Yeah.
And I could just
Yeah.
remember asking God, like, yo, God, like, man, but shouldn't we have a different response? Like, shouldn't our
Yeah.
response be different?
Yeah.
Shouldn't it be countercultural? And I said, God, well, why can't we start a riot? And he says, you can, but it has to be a righteous riot. And
That's
so,
good.
man, I began to just pray about that. And he gives me the scripture, 2 Corinthians 10:4, and it says, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. They're mighty through God for the pulling down of strongholds. So I ain't got no bottles, I ain't got no guns to throw, I ain't got no, but I do have a weapon. And it can change things. It sets everything in motion, and that's the weapon of prayer. And
Yeah.
we take captive every thought that
Yeah.
sets itself up against God. And so God says, yeah, you can start a riot, but it's got to be a righteous one. And so giving that message to students, like, yo, like you can start a riot, but it's going to be a righteous one. It's going to be a counter-cultural response to the things that you're seeing in culture, in your schools, in your homes. And so that's the idea behind Riot Starter.
No, that's good. That's good. And I got and I want to make, because I know some people when they heard it, you and I went back and forth around the title of it. And when they think about riot, they're thinking, no, I don't want my kid to have this. I don't want my kid to kind of be in this space. My youth
Yeah,
ministry, I don't want. But the understanding that you need a righteous riot, and really what you need is a righteous igniting,
yeah,
right? You need this thing to push you, because if you could do it in a more seemingly way, our
right.
culture would look different, right? If
Of
you
course.
could do it
Yeah,
in another way. So
yeah,
so help me understand, or help the people understand. And again, y'all who are listening and watching, we thank God for you on there. You can like, you can comment, you can subscribe. You can share this in the show notes. You'll see ways to get your Riot Starter copy, whether the hard copy or the ebook. But I want to help us understand, who is a riot starter. Who
I think
is
I
a
think the
riot starter?
person that when you talk about responses, and you talk about Martin Luther King said the riot is simply the voice of the unheard.
Yeah,
That person has got to the point where they're no longer willing to accept the way things are. That
yeah,
person is ready to change, and it could be something as small as, like, on my block. Like, we want to make sure that young people are going to be safe. We want to make sure that
hmm
my block is safe, and that person that says, like, I'm no longer satisfied with the way things are, and they're ready to create change. They're ready to be a change agent, and that person is a riot starter.
that's
Because
good.
they've developed a mindset that says, I don't like the way this is. It's been this way too long, and it's time for change. And I think giving language to that mindset, giving language to that concept is simply creating a righteous riot by creating a positive change, by creating a positive in our community, in our schools, in your house. That's the mentality of a riot starter. That's what a person that would deem themselves a riot starter is.
I think that's phenomenal. So I'm cheating because I got the book, right, and so
Yeah.
there's a couple excerpts, right. So one of them, right, is it says, and this is in the introduction, right. You say maybe the church hasn't given them the cause for which they could be passionate about, right. And in this section, you're talking and you're explaining about, it is good, brother. In this, and you wrote it in this season. People say, well, why my kids won't get excited, my students aren't, it's not a thing. You say maybe they haven't seen the cause that they can be excited about, that they can be passionate about, because we know they got passion,
They
right?
got that.
But I want to hear you kind of reflect on that, right? That maybe the church hasn't given them the cause for which they can be passionate about.
It's that mission we talked about. It's
Yeah.
Students don't need passion, like they got that already. Like they just need permission for a mission. And I think when we give them that, I mean, we talking about, there's a new normal, and listen, get them at the table and let them tell you what it's supposed to look like, because I promise you they already know what it's supposed to look like. We just got to give them permission because they already have the passion. And I think that's what's missing. We're sitting them in front of dilapidated programming in our youth ministries simply because we feel like this is the way. And it's so crazy that we're talking about ministry pivot. We have to give them a mission. We have to give them a call, so which they would be like ignited for. Like they would just be like, yo, like, so this is why I'm here. I'm not here just to play Chubby Bunny and put a bunch of marshmallows in my mouth. Like, that's cool. I'm not knocking anybody that does that. If you do that, man, keep doing it. I think that's the dopest game yet. But I'm telling you, it's not going to be enough to cause them to want to create an amazing change in their schools, in their youth ministries. They have to have a cause. They have to have a mission. And they don't need passion. Like, they got that. Every time you tell them, hey, let's go do such and such, kids are at the front. Like, yo, where we going? But it's because they're passionate about it. So just give them permission for a greater mission.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the pieces that stuck out when we first started talking about this book, and you first started writing this book, is that you had something, and I want you to talk just a little bit about it. How Riot Starter kind of ignited with the See You at the Pole event that happened several years ago, and you had over 1 million views of this young person who was at the pole, super excited, and just leading in prayer. But the point that you just said is one of the key terms throughout the book, is that they don't need passion, they need permission. Right. And they need the opportunity to be given permission because they already got the passion. But I want you to talk just a little bit about that because you had students who had passion and you had already given the permission. But I want you to talk a little bit about that moment several years ago at See You at the Pole.
Yeah, man. I think which is such a, man, I really believe it was one of the I guess the turning points for our ministry, even again on along the cusp of the things that you were sharing with us. But there was a black kid shot by a white cop on the front lawn of our youth campus, like literally on the front lawn. And this was at a time where riots are huge in our nation, and that the Mike Brown thing had happened a year ago, and so maybe a year and a half by that time. But a white right here in Memphis, Memphis is already kind of racially divided city. Martin Luther King assassinated, so it was a big deal. So this kid was shot on the front lawn of our youth campus, and I pull up the next morning, that Saturday morning, and I just see yellow tape everywhere, and
Wow.
and so this kid lost his life to this. And immediately you saw all these different organizations that were setting up to recruit kids to like kind of go riot, like go riot, like we're gonna go do this.
Wow.
And we just felt like, man, like not this, like there has to be another response. Like I said, the riot is a
Yeah.
response, but there has to be another response. And so we begin to equip our students with the power of prayer. We begin to equip our students with sharing the gospel. That whole summer is like, yo, we're gonna give them something to do. Like, what do we do after the hashtag? Like, after we post and do all, like, what are we gonna do? And so we said, here's what we're gonna do after we finish posting after the hashtag. And so that whole summer, we had made a commitment that every Wednesday in that school year that we were going to pray at all the schools that we were represented in. And our youth ministry, was pretty large youth ministry, and we were representing a lot of different schools. And so we were like, yo, like that whole summer, we had kids gave captains, like, you're gonna be a captain at this school, you're gonna be the captain, man, get other people. And so we were like mobilizing, like that's because we recognize that, like, if not, like, these young people are gonna go be a part of these different organizations. And so it came to be that the day that we were going to start happened to be at See You at the Pole. It happened to, right. So, and we had already said, like, listen, we're not just gonna do See You at the Pole, we're gonna do every single Wednesday. But it actually happened to be the first day that we did it was See You at the Pole. And so before we did it, this particular school, shouts out Germantown High School. My daughter actually goes there now, which is crazy. I'm tripping. Crazy. And so they come to me and they say, yo, PJ, like, they told us that if we are 1 minute late to class, they're gonna suspend everybody. And the students are like, they're like, well, I say, well, what do you guys want to do? And they were like, oh, we praying. We just want to let you know what's going on. Why? Because, like, they had a mission, right? And they just had permission for the mission. And, man, listen, the next day, man, over 500 students show up at this pole. And, man, one of my students, he's leading the prayer. And, man, he begins to call heaven down. I'm talking about he is praying. He actually is rocking a Riot Starter shirt while he's doing it. And somebody takes out a phone. And he probably should have had his eyes closed, but that's what they do now. So he took out a phone and he records this prayer and he sends it out to Twitter. And the next moment, man, my phone is going crazy. And this thing went viral. Memphis Grizzlies ball players were sharing it. The news. I mean, it just took off. And I think think people needed to see another response. And God put that response on display for our city that was really hurting at the time. They needed to see that there was another response, and it just ignited all over the city.
Yeah, and I think that's dope. And I'm gonna put the clip at minimum of that in the show notes. I'm probably gonna be able to put it up on this joint so people can see it. But so that clip, right, is dope. That clip ignites this Riot Starter kind of movement, or propels it because it was already ignited. And now this book is out. I want to read one more. One more quote from toward the end of the book, right? It's the chapter, what does a riot starter look like? And you write that riot starters recognize that there is an opportunity for hope, for things to be better, right? That riot starters can see into a better future. I want you to reflect on that a little bit, because I really want to talk about, again, we're still talking about the who can be a riot starter, right? But now, what does a riot starter do? But to talk about a little bit about the kind of vision of why a riot starter does what a riot starter does.
Yeah, I think when you think about young people, and it's not just young people. I mean, there's a 65-year-old woman at our church that calls herself a riot starter. Like, she tells herself, like, I'm a riot starter. And I think what that person is simply saying is that you can sense it. Like, you can sense where that situations need to be better. You can sense that that people have been marginalized, and you can sense where, I mean, our students are in schools where you're going to youth group, but then you go to your school and, like, you don't see the hope that you see in your youth group. You don't see people that are excited or that have joy to honestly to live another day. That's an opportunity that I think a riot starter says, like, man, I believe I can. Man, let me not wait to call them to come to my youth group, or let me not wait to ask them to come to my church. Man, I can start this movement right here on my campus. And I think that's the move, and that's the heart behind that person that says, I recognize that there can be better here. And so So what we waiting for? Let's just do it right here. We don't have to wait till we get to church on Sunday or youth group on
Good.
Wednesday. Man, we can create a movement right here. We taught. I was teaching the students the other day. Man, make some moves that make movements. And you can start
Yeah.
that right there at your school. And I think that's kind of the heart and the mindset behind the person. Like I said, that 65-year-old woman's like, yo, like I believe truly that I'm a Riot Starter because I believe that I can make things better in my context right where I am.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and I think this book, this tool, this resource is going to be super dope. Tell people about the book, of course, and we know we can get it on we still riot.org. It's going to be on the show notes. It'll be on the bottom of where we are right now. But also, we push to get this small group. So let's talk a little bit about the small group and the
Oh, yeah.
videos that go with and the book. So I'm biased, right? So all throughout the book, y'all can see all throughout the book. There are videos from Pastor J, kind of just setting the frame for the context of the chapter. So I'm super dope. But tell them about the small group, the resource, and how they can how it will help them.
Yeah, I think the small group piece and the videos. I mean, we live in a generation. We're talking about ministry pivots. Our
Yeah.
generation listens with their eyes, and
Hmm.
so what we found is that we have to sometimes we got to speak their language, and video and visuals are their language. And so in the book, you're going to be able to have the opportunity to like scan the QR code, and it's going to take you to a video that is kind of like the opener to set up the small group lesson. So if you're a youth pastor or you're a student, and I really hitting on, man, this doesn't have to be led by the youth pastor, right? A bunch
Hmm.
of students can grab this and do this at their lunchroom table. They can do it at the baseball field after school,
Yep.
and they can really take this small group piece. You can have on your phone, you can watch the video together, and then the small
Yep.
group takes you through a series of discussion questions, and not just discussion that has application. Like, here's how we can do this at our school. Here's how we can do this, in our community. And so I think that was such a pivot for us to be able, like, yo, like, how can we not only give people this message or this language of creating a righteous riot, but also giving them the opportunity to dialogue about it and then give application on how to actually do
Yeah, and I think that's dope. Again, I'm super excited about the book, super excited about your work, super excited about what it's going to do as we round out. And we want people to, of course, follow Pastor J. You see information there to be able to do that. Again, it'll be in the show notes, and Ministry Pivot. It'll be on there. And of course, where books are listed, you can get it. But outside of Riot Starter, outside of that, I always like to talk about books and resources. And now with the topic is Riot Starter, but the topic is also youth ministry. The topic is also just culture. What's some resources that you would recommend for the pastor who's watching, the bishop who's watching, the lay leader who's watching, the mom, the dad who's watching, the student who's watching? What's a book that may be helpful for them? I know you run around the country now as well, preaching and teaching, but what's a resource that may be helpful for them?
Man, I think actually a book that I'm reading right now is Grace Awakenings by
Mm.
Chuck Swindoll. Chuck
Yeah,
Swindoll. And
yeah,
it's bro, when I say this is just another, mind shift. I think for the leader, for the young person that's like I want to be a part of creating movements that are definitely gospel led, that are definitely led by the mentality of creating change and creating better. And
yeah,
then there's another book that I just personally um love is Chase the Lion by Mark Batterson.
yeah,
Solid, man, just a solid, man, just a book that awakens the purpose that's in you and awakens. And I would challenge anybody that if you're thinking about this type of change and leadership and mindset, those are some books right now that I'm reading. Oh man, and there's one more that I think would be a really good
okay,
book. Movements That Change the World by
mm,
Steve Addison.
okay,
Another any youth pastor, young adult that wants to read about moving, because I really think that's we talk about the widow woman and the oil and the vessel. God's
Hmm.
oil and spirit has never been the issue. It's like, yo, do I
Yeah.
have a vessel to put the
Nah,
oil in? And so if we're
that's good.
willing vessels, like, God will be willing to like start movements through us. And so Steve Addison, Movements That Change the World, those are some books that I'm diving into right now.
Okay, no, that's dope. I'm gonna link all of those in the
Okay.
show notes. Actually, one of the Mark Batterson, I think, I don't know if it was before Chase the Lion or after Chase the Lion, but he has this book, In the Pit, with the lion on a snowy
On the
day.
snowy day.
And that joint is
Yes,
crazy too. I
sir.
I just sent that to a young adult out in LA we used to serve with. But man, I am super excited. Again, I've said that several times, but I am about Riot Starter. Super excited about your ministry, man, and what God is doing with you out there in Memphis and really all over, because you're traveling, doing it all over. You can contact Pastor Jay. I'm gonna put his information in there.
Cool.
I definitely recommend you grab the book. Definitely recommend you grab him as a resource to help with coaching in your youth ministry, even in your church, just thinking through what that can look like. I'm going again to link everything we spoke about here in the show notes. Don't forget to comment, to like, to subscribe. Don't
Yeah.
forget to share this. Don't forget to hit notify, and really don't forget to comment, y'all, because commenting on Apple, commenting in YouTube allows it to move up in the algorithm. Y'all
Mm.
know how Big Brother works.
Yeah,
So just make sure
right.
that you do that. Help us out there. But I'm super excited as you move in ministry, as you pivot in ministry, as this is your season of opportunity. I really believe that Riot Start is going to be something that's going to help to
Mm.
bring a conscious riot and a riot that is countercultural. And Lord knows we need something to help us counter culture in this season with all that is going on. And so right before Christmas, go ahead and grab Riot Starter. It's available now. It's available everywhere. So make sure that you can do that. And we look forward to seeing you soon as you continue in this season of opportunity. Pastor Jay, thanks again, man, for being with us
Man,
on Ministry Pivot.
publicly, man, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you, man, for all your wisdom and coaching and pushing and bullying, and it's been all great, man. I definitely do not take it for granted. So it's great to be connected to amazing leaders like you. So I appreciate you, man.
Awesome, man. Bless you, man. Love you, bro. We'll talk with you all soon. God bless.
Peace.